Hello everyone and welcome back to Megabuild Survival with me, the Maximus JK, and as you can see, I've been very busy on building up Aia again. This is about 20 hours of progress condensed down into a 15-second time lapse just for the intro of this video. And I don't plan on working on Aia for the rest of this video, so this is just going to be something that I chip away in the background. It's not even in the thumbnail, we're moving right past this. This is one of the projects that will just take time, and it's not really exciting to watch on camera or watch me do it. I chip away at it, I watch a movie, and I just kind of get it done. I'll be very happy once it's over, but until then, it'll just be a grind. As you can see, I got almost halfway up this build, and I'm right now at water level. So technically, I could be good to remove all the sand and the leaves and get this flush with the water, but I don't think I'm ready for that, and I think that will be the final step that I do, as I would like to clear out all the flying machines and clear out all my storage, which is not rendered over there. Since I've been AFKing here, I've gotten a lot of resources just grinding over time, and I will not need Prismarine for a long while. I am definitely not close to being done, as I do still have a bunch more to do. As you can see, I still have many layers to go before we reach the top of this build. It does get skinnier as we go up, but it's still very complicated with all these crazy routes and the bridge that goes off into the fog. But this is not the main project that we're going to work on in this episode. I'm skimming past this just because there's something I'm really excited to start working on today. So let's head over and start a brand new project. I am here at a new location, which will be the future place of a new Megabuild. I've teased this in other episodes, but I wanted to make a Gothic Cathedral inspired Megabuild, which will be my main storage room and main hub of this world. I've decided to choose this biome because I think it's a really beautiful view in the new 1.18 terrain, which I've yet to build anything in. You can see that your vision and your eyesight always move towards the top of this mountain, and you can start to see the blackstone lines that I outlined for this Gothic Cathedral. Gothic architecture was built between the 12th and 16th centuries in England, basically during the Middle Ages. It has a lot of unique architectural interest that is associated with the style. Think flying buttresses, interesting pillars, and highly decorated stained glass windows. I think it's a really beautiful style of architecture. The most famous real-life build that is of Gothic architecture is Notre Dame. Unfortunately burned down a few years ago, but it's a beautiful example of the style and the beauty that can come with Gothic architecture. I've already decided to lay out some idea of what I want this build to look like. And in Gothic cathedrals, it's always built within the cross. So there's 5 blocks in between each of these sections, and it's 7 sections within a square. And you can see that I have 1 square here, 1 square here, 1 square as the central square with 2 wings on the side, and then 1 square in the back. I will need to do some terraforming, as I think this major hill is the biggest thing that is in the way. But luckily, I got a ton of beacons, so it's not going to be a problem. But this is not just going to be an above ground build. I actually have some plans for below this base. I'm going to pop a night vision potion and hop into free cam mode and show you some of the beautiful areas that are underneath this massive build. The main thing I want to show you is this cave right here. You can see that there's a lot of room here, as well as another layer up here, which also has a lot of room. My plan is for this to be the future storage room, and any sort of thing that I want in a main base will be in this cave. It will connect directly to the surface, and you will see that this cathedral will be the topper to the underground cave system that I'm going to call my future base. This project is going to be massive, but I know that I want to do something special, and as a central place for all my items and storage and furnaces and whatever I need to continue this world for the future. Another thing I noticed is that this area is filled a lot with powdered snow. And you can kind of get lost. Oh, you can't even see me, but you can kind of get lost in this powdered snow. So I actually made a new piece of armor called crampons. Crampons are used in mountain climbing, especially in frozen areas. These are fully decked out leather boots, but I also made 3 other sets. I hopefully will not have any issues with powdered snow in the future. As for block palettes and ideas, I don't really have a good idea of what block palette I want to use. I made this outline with blackstone just because I feel like it's a very contrasting block, especially to the white snow. But I'm not sure what design choices I'm going to make. I know that there's some design choices that are really important to Gothic architecture, like flying buttresses, beautiful spires, and a lot of interesting arch shapes. So I want to incorporate those into the build, and I've been doing as much research as I can to understand the style and how it works and where it came from. I'm right by City Hall in downtown Philadelphia, and I wanted to show you guys this church, which is right near here, which is kind of a style of Gothic architecture. I wanted to point out some things that are pretty prominent in Gothic architecture, and although I'm in Philadelphia, it's not the greatest city in the world for Gothic architecture. I am not in Europe, but I wanted to show you some of the windows that's used in Gothic architecture. You see these kind of sharp, pointy arches instead of bigger and kind of wider arches. These things that jut out are called buttresses, which hold up the roof originally in old style cathedrals. Now with modern building techniques, it doesn't mean as much, but you can see how this would hold up the wall. And so in some Gothic architecture, they move this back and they have arches that go over top to hold up the roof. This is the front facade of the building, and you can see how massive this stained glass window is, and it has that arch again. And you can see these arches are all throughout the building. Especially in the front, you can see that these columns are not just one column, but multiple columns kind of set back into the window, into the door, framing out the arch a little bit. And I wanted to show you guys the tower. This is a really, really steep and pointed roof, which might be a part of it, and it is a square, and you get to see those arches right there, which is still, you know, a part of the architecture and the building as a whole. So this is the style that I'm trying to replicate, and you get to see it here in person. While I'm here, I want to show you the Masonic Temple, which is also right next to City Hall, and the church is right behind it. But look at how crazy this tower looks. And you can see some of the detailing here, like on the tops of these columns, some of these windows and the spires. And I really like this tower specifically. This building is not necessarily Gothic architecture, but it has some similar styles like the color, and you can see the buttresses that go right here. But all these arches are curved and not like the pointed arches that we saw in the other church. This is Minecraft, so I would like to take a few liberties, especially with the color palette. These builds were simply made in the Middle Ages where they didn't have a lot of materials. Usually made out of a local stone or some sort of wood to incorporate into the roof, as it was a lightweight material. I don't know what my future holds here for this build. This is a mega build, so I do not know how much I'm going to be able to build in this episode, but I am definitely super duper excited to start. But the first thing I want to do is clear out this area and get an idea of what this base is going to look like. While I would like to keep this terrain, I think this mountain does have to go, and any sort of mountain that's inside this internal structure that I've already laid out needs to at least be flattened or dug down a little bit. So I think that's going to be my next job here, but I'll catch up with you guys once I've made a dent in this area. See ya! Back in the world here, and although it's kind of covered up in snow, you can see that I tried to flatten out some of this area. I took down some of that mountain, I took down this spire here, and I got rid of all the powdered snow that was in this area. It did snow a little bit, but generally I tried to flatten out this area, and you can see the big kind of boxy line that I created in the snow. But I decided to get lazy, and I decided to add flying machines. This is a flying machine designed by Bobbert Pickle, which I will link in the video description. It looks pretty easy, and hopefully it will be pretty painless to mine out this area. So I set up all the TNT flying machines, and I've tested them going back and forth, but I have not tested them with TNT. So I believe they're all primed. I've turned off those stations over there, so this should just go one way over. Bobbert Pickle said that I should build these flying machines 10 blocks higher than the tallest point. The return stations over there are 10 blocks taller than that point, and so I'm ready to prime the machine. If we just place the TNT here... So if we place the TNT here, I misunderstood the tutorial. So if we place the TNT here under this wall, that should prime the machine and get it ready for destruction. TNT is in just on this one side, but I'm ready to test it. It should go one way and then stop on the other side. Hopefully this will work. So the TNT is not going, but it is in place, which is a good thing. Slowly making its way over. Okay, so that side is primed. Now, if we do the other side, here it will be primed. And then it should be ready to actually blow some stuff up. Does take a minute, but it's going to be a lot faster than digging out all these layers. And we're trying to get the TNT to go all the way down to most likely here, which is around 0. Blast through 160 layers of blocks here, so I think it'll be pretty exciting. All right, now we're going to prime the other side. Okay, so the TNT is primed on both sides. So I think we're ready to start this test. Okay. Flick the lever. And perfect. The TNT seems to be working. I put obsidian here on the corners. That is very loud. But it might be a little bit bigger than what we were planning. But hopefully that should work. I think we should be good to send the rest of these. Now that's the destruction that I wanted. You hear the music, so it's time to mine out some chunks. This was quite a project. After over 2 days of work, I have officially finished digging out a lot of this space. And you can see that this thing is miles and miles tall. Plus, I'm going to build a building on top of this thing. It's going to be absolutely enormous. You may notice that I'm in a square that happens to be a little bit deeper than the square over here and the layer that this actual build is at. My plan was for that layer behind me to be the floor of the build, but the problem is these flying machines were a little too high, and then these flying machines were a little too low. I accidentally dug out a big chunk of area here, but I don't actually think that's a problem. I want to convert this into a bamboo farm that will power all of my furnaces. So we'll put a glass layer up here on the same level of this floor, and then I think that should be good. Another thing I want to do is flatten this area out and take this chunk and kind of make this wall and this as the main floor of the base. There's also some other work that I will need to do. For example, this wall of stone needs to be cut out, as well as maybe opening this up and removing some things to have some bigger and better ideas. But boy, is that going to be a large project, and I'm definitely super excited to get working on it. The thing that was the most frustrating about clearing this out is I discovered a massive water pocket here that would be a part of the actual digging out process, and clearing out water in this game is literally never fun. I cleared out a massive chunk of it, but it still goes on forever and ever and ever. I don't know if I'm going to clear out any more. It kind of depends on how this build progresses over time, but I'm definitely not opposed to doing it, especially if I break it up into smaller sections. Boy, am I going to need a lot of fireworks. Since this was a mountain biome, I was able to mine a bunch of emerald ore, as well as finding some diamonds during this process. Although both of those blocks don't really have any value to me, it was definitely worth picking up, and it was definitely an interesting find. I also will have to light up a lot of these caves, as these caves kind of go on forever, so I need to figure out a safe way to figure out how to navigate these. There's also this area underground everything, but I already got a big project ahead of me. I don't need to start expanding and building out the scope of this project. Woo! It also looks like we do have a slime chunk here, but I already have a slime chunk dug out in the previous base, so I don't think it'll be that important to have a slime farm. Slime is basically useless at this point. I haven't even considered block pallets for this build, but I know one thing's for sure. It has to be farmable. I cannot manually grind for anything at this scale, so we're going to have to build a lot of upcoming interesting farms in the future. Now, I want to have massive arches probably surround this, and it'll open up into this cave area with little storage and little contraptions across the way. I will definitely need to set up a ton of beacons and clean out a lot of these lines, set everything up, and you can see that, like, although most of this area is dug out, I'll still have to scrape off some layers here, and that does not even include the depth and interest that I want to add to these walls, which could take a long, long, long time. As you can see, during this process, my tools and stuff took a total beating, as well as almost using 5 netherite picks, as well as my next one. So I am going to have to repair a whole bunch of things. As you can see, I outlined the build in obsidian to make sure that my measurements would not get messed up. So we built this in the style of a cross, which is what all Gothic cathedrals are built out of. And the thing I want to have is this really impressive view looking up. I want to look up and you can see how tall the build is from the ground. The internals of this build will be super different from the externals, but I think you would really get a sense of scale once these walls have been decked out and clearly built. That's going to be a lot of work, and it's going to take a lot of time, so there is no way that I am finishing this in this episode. But I definitely got a good start to this project, and I think it's going to go really, really cool over the next months and years to come. Just like all my builds, I want to create a boxy outline of what I believe will be the perfect size for this build. And I'm going to get some stone bricks. This is definitely not the final material that I'm going to make this out of, and just kind of build a box that will outline what I think this build will probably look like. If I just pillar up here, we'll see how high I want this build to go and what I think looks appropriate. So that's a pillar at Y200, and that looks pretty good as a size. You want to see it in the scope of the actual building, but the problem is that when it gets into the mountain, it's not going to look so tall. Let me build it out to this side and see how it looks. One thing that is good about building at this scale is that you don't need to really work at the fine details because everything is going to look so massive and so big that the finer details kind of fade away into the background. That's the obsidian block there. Once it gets Swift Sneak in 1.19, I think it will really speed up the building of this cathedral, especially for large flat walls. Yeah, that's definitely more like it. You can kind of see the scale that I'm going for. I want some big, thick buttresses right here and some small pillars that are floating and attached to the sides of these walls, and you'll really see what I mean once we get those in place. But I feel like there's something missing. Let's see how that looks. Hopefully it gives a little more shape and a little more excitement and power to the structure. Oh boy, this thing is going to be massive. I think I want to add 2 front towers to this build, same as they have in Notre Dame. This central spire is inspired by the Gothic Cathedral in Liverpool, and I really like the shape and the beauty that that structure has. But as you can see, from all the way down here, this thing will look sick. You can barely even see the top, and I think it's going to look really, really cool standing from down here. Although, you're really going to be standing from down here. Yeah, that's really taking shape here, and I think it's working out really, really well. What do you think, Mr. Pig? This is great. I'm really, really seeing the vision now, and I can start seeing and shaping some of these ideas in my head. Instead of big boxes, these would be spires and roof lines, and the ideas are flowing. But I think I want to take a break from this build as I've been going at it for a few days now, and let's head back to the village. Back in the starter village here, and last episode we worked on this great hall. It's been slowly oxidizing over time, and I think the green makes it stand out really, really well, and it looks so cool in that weathered state. I talked in the last episode how I really hated this building. I don't know what's wrong with it, but something just throws me off. It's very flat and not much is happening, and it just doesn't do it for me at all. The roof is kind of boring, and these like weird walkways, which I don't understand, and it's very crowded over there. So I think my plan is to tear this down and put something here instead. I want to do something pretty similar. This village has a kind of defined style already, so probably something like that. And it'll look good from the coastline. Not sure if I want to keep this beach or not. I like the moss design we have up there, but it might look better covering this all with grass. Another thing I want to do is expand some of the fields at the end of the island. I already have some of the flowers, but I think it would look really, really cool getting, you know, 1 or 2 or 3 more crop farms around here. And then maybe we expand into this area in the future. I'm not sure. I'm taking this one really fluidly, and I don't really have a major plans. I think something right here would look super, super cool. So I think I'm going to work on that, and I think it'll really tie in this downward kind of visual line. Some height in between those buildings I think would look really nice. But, hold on a second. I gotta sneeze. Achoo! Hey, would you look at that? This is the newest build in the village, and I like the way that it turned out, especially this tower and the roof of this tower on the side. You can see that I put in a big window right here with tinted glass, so you can't really see what's through there, but maybe I'll put something interesting like a library or I don't know what could go in there. Looking at it from our primary angle, which is around here, you can really see this tower, and I'm super proud of this roof. I don't do a lot of curved roofs and a lot of turrets, so I'm really happy with the way that this tiny turret turned out. This roof line is pretty similar to the roofs that you find all around this village, and I have this main window here as a point of interest. I also detailed out this turret with some windows and some redstone lamps, which is already in the build palette in this lighthouse. I have the spikes up top, and I really like that this tower is just 1 block taller, and it has just a little interest as you can kind of see it going up, and your eyes kind of go up with that tower. But clearly some of the terraforming still needs a lot of work as it kind of gets a little janky towards the bottom. I added some blackstone bricks just to give a little more texture to the bottom of this build, but I don't know how well it worked out. But from here you can clearly see that terraforming is needed. I don't need to extend the cliffs, but I definitely want to get rid of this beach. Another thing I want to do in this area is make a bunch of fields. So let's hit time-lapse mode and start working on a lot of these fields. As you can see from the time-lapse, I expanded the fields over here and changed all the sand and the beaches into grass and farmland. I created this massive potato field here, which I think looks really, really nice, and especially makes this place look a lot more fruitful and full of vegetation. Another field I added was this fern field. I added a mixture of coarse dirt and rooted dirt for the actual area where the ferns would go, and then have vertical lines of path blocks that go in between those rows of ferns. I decided to use the 1 tall ferns and the 2 tall ferns because I thought it added some interesting details that not many other fern farms have. I also added this pink lilac field, which greatly adds some color to this area, and I think looks really, really nice in contrast to a lot of the green textures that you get to see in this area. I also added moss here, which I think just adds some general layer of vegetation and makes an area look just a tiny bit more interesting. And the main project here is continuing out this walkway and the docks down there. This walkway actually is a continuation from a previous project that I worked on a few episodes ago, where I had this archway go into the mountain right under this tower that we just built today. This bridge is a continuation. As we walk through it, we will see it slowly oxidize over time. Right now it's in its orange phase, but we can see, much better. We can see that this bridge continues all the way down to the water to a dock area. We also added some storage barrels here and here and here using note blocks and barrels and composters and chests just to add some interest to these docks. I think it would be cool to add a ship or two maybe out here in the future, but let's see how the expansion goes on the other side of this cliff. But the observant of you may have noticed something interesting on these docks, and it's right here behind me. We do finally have chest boat minecarts, which means I have officially upgraded to 1.19. Unfortunately, we're not really going to be able to touch 1.19 in this episode as it's kind of coming to a close. I'm so excited to work with the 1.19 blocks, mobs, and features in the next episodes to come. So with that, I think it's going to be the end of the episode. Thanks everyone for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.